Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the Kamen Rider collab that has come back to North America. So, as a whole, I feel like this event is underwhelming, mostly because the bottom rarity or 5-star cards comprise 77.3% of the rolling pool, and unfortunately, I don't think they're particularly great. Most of them cards, all the cards, despite having weapon assists, don't necessarily change the dynamics of your monster box that much. We have many possible replacements or alternatives for these bottom rarity cards, and as a result, the vast majority of things you roll will be kind of sad. And for myself, I rolled quite heavily in the Player's Choice Godfest, and of course, as a result, lots of my magic stones have been depleted. But at the same time, I managed to acquire so much valuable cards, like many firsts, many Godfest exclusives, and even like the complete whiffs and misses are, at least I feel, a little stronger compared to the whiffs or misses within the Kamen Rider event. So, in terms of the pros, as already mentioned, every card has a weapon assist, which does technically give them a bit more value. But at the same time, I feel like the weapon assists for the bottom rarity are really just not keeping pace. They could have been released a year or two ago, and we wouldn't necessarily have blinked an eye because they wouldn't have necessarily been that big standouts. They're just okay. But for anyone with a modestly developed monster box, you're going to have less value from overall. I guess another possible pro is that it costs 6 magic stones per roll, which in turn means it costs 5 Godfest exclusives, or 5 6-star Godfest exclusives to Monster Exchange for the higher rarity cards. If that's something that does interest you, it is probably a much better approach compared to rolling within this event. Another possible benefit is that there is a large rolling pool, which technically means rolling should have a lower chance of dupes. There is no guarantee of that whatsoever, but at the same time, you can argue that of a bigger rolling pool, it's harder to snipe exactly what you want. So with that in mind, at least for myself, I plan to just utilize my free rolls. I don't think I'm going to Monster Exchange, and I'm just going to leave it at that. On the other hand, if you feel like you can benefit from the higher rarity cards or the orb skin cards, Monster Exchanging or utilizing the IAP bundles can be a meaningful choice. But without further ado, I want to jump into each of the individual cards. So, before I go a little bit further, I want to preface saying that this article was difficult to write. I have quite a few health issues, and my wrists have been problematic for a long period of time, and it makes it difficult to type. So, for those who are reading this article, there's going to be less word text, but I did still include pros and cons for every single card, which will make it a little easier to get a general idea, but if you want a much more thorough explanation of the video, which you are watching at this point in time, it's probably going to be better because when at least I summarize my articles, I'm mostly just kind of looking at the pros and cons and memorizing the things I wrote about it. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the new Saber individual. So, they are a 20-turn transforming card with 2 skill boosts in their base form. So, it helps a little bit. It's obviously not as, meaningful or impactful compared to, Sin Dragons or Key Heroes, but Syndrag, Key Heroes, or Mystics, but the base skill is okay. It's not the greatest amount of durability. Maybe you could tank a hit, and maybe you can't, depends who you pair with. So it all depends on can you survive early on, because your leader skill is definitely much weaker, I feel, compared to the longer transforming cards. But once you do transform, you are given a powerful damage card because you have a 10 combo and 2 7 combos, which is 20 times personal damage against any spawn. You also have a large attack set, so this is definitely meaningful. You can gain killers of most of the relevant types for current in-game content, which again is helpful. The main drawback of this is, well, there is no VDP, so you have to rely on someone else to do the void penetration damage. You have a lot of redundant awakenings, I feel. So this is going to apply to blades as well because they have a similar template, but in their base form, they have no skill bind resist, and once they transform, you have 2. 1 skill bind resist is definitely helpful. You need 5 across your entire team to be immune to bind, so it's unlikely you're going to have 2 cards who don't have it. But at the same time, when you need the skill bind resist the most is usually when you pre-transform. If you're playing, say, AA4, the very first floor has an awoken skill or has a skill bind right away as a preemptive. So you don't have it here, but you're going to have excessive skill bind resist after you transform. I feel like that is wasteful in terms of awakenings because transforming cards tend to be better as a general blanket statement because, well, they have to go through this hurdle of transforming, so their awakening should be stronger. And then at the same time, they have regular bind immunity. They have 2 of those. So in my opinion, they've lost 2 awakening slots. feels kind of bad when you could have been a similar output with 7 awakenings. Like, it doesn't really make sense. So those 2 others could have been something else more meaningful. So that is definitely a bit of a hindrance, along with the lack of VDP. If a VDP was slapped on top, this would have been a much different conversation to be having. But the problematic awakenings aside, their active skill, once they transform, creates a perfect board of 10 fire, 10 light, and 10 heal orbs. So you're going to be guaranteed that split every single time. It's on a 5-turn cooldown, which is definitely reasonable, but at the same time, you're not countering mechanics. Gillian has a 3-turn cooldown that at least overwrites RCV and time debuffs. Norza does something similar. Like, we're looking at other transforming leaders. Sena has a 2-turn cooldown, which means you can system and loop yourselves. You can't do that here. 5 turns, I feel like, is almost a little awkward. It's like, it's nice, but it's not necessarily providing enough value in the sense that, like, it's not countering other mechanics. It's really just a board changer with more consistency. You're going to get that VDP every single time, or you're going to hit the 9 combos, but the point is, I feel like it should have done a little bit more to really set it apart. As a leader, you have nice multipliers overall, and this damage reduction component occurs when you match 4 or more connected fire orbs, and the auto follow-up attack from the same activation. So, sorry, you get attack multiplier 4 or more connected fire orbs and auto follow-up attack. Easy to activate for damage, and your damage reduction comes from being above 50% health. So this is kind of like Gillian. As long as you're above 50% health, so that means you could be below, match hard orbs, get above, you can have the extra zest of damage reduction. Naturally, the problem with these types of leader skills is that multi-hits are much more dangerous. You can survive a large single hit because you get the full damage reduction for the entire value, but if a multi-hit would bring you below 50% health at any time, every subsequent hit will be dealing their maximum damage, and that is definitely problematic. So that's something you just need to be mindful of. So if you can keep your health high enough, you're obviously going to be okay. Be aware that multi-hits or spawn or floors with multiple spawns can be much more dangerous by comparison. So this leader skill has, I feel, synergy with Gillian. They both have a relatively similar activation requirement, at least for their damage reduction component. They both need to be above 50% health, so why not pair together? And with Gillian, you gain a higher health multiplier, less damage reduction, so it probably evens out overall. You don't have the RCV, so you probably still want to have a healing solution, but the auto-follow attack from Saber definitely can be helpful. And the biggest drawback I feel with this pairing, or just Saber in general, is that they need 10 combos to truly succeed. And right now, I don't feel like there's any fire leader that's going to reliably hit 10 combos outside of Sena. And Sena needs water and fire. There is no place for this type of active skill in a team. If you're going to run a board changer that doesn't make water and fire, you want to run Gillian, because Gillian at least gives you the time and RCV buffs and a shorter base cooldown, so it's just easier to work around with. So I feel like as a whole, like, Saber is strong, but the shortcomings of no VDP, nowhere truly great to utilize them as a sub, because if you can't hit 10 combos, you're not dealing meaningful damage, and that was kind of the whole point of utilizing this card. You don't have any extra resist. Like, I feel like they're just lacking a little bit of something to truly make them a standout, and I think the biggest issue came down to these awakenings just being redundant, unfortunately. But at the same time, if you do manage to get them, you definitely could pair with Gillian, I feel, and it would still create a strong team. Obviously, hitting 10 combos could be hard. I wouldn't want to use Sena with them because, well, this board changer isn't helpful. It's a longer cooldown. It's a little awkward, I feel. But maybe, if you're truly ambitious, maybe it could work. Maybe it would. You just need to have a different thing inherited over top of them. And you need to make sure you can actually have a continuous flow of orbs. But even so, hitting 8 combos every turn may not necessarily trigger this, and at the same time, I'd still prefer Gillian because Gillian just needs 7 combos anyways. Less personal damage, but Gillian has a better active skill. For their weapon assist, I don't feel like there's any true merits to making it at this point in time, mostly because the opportunity cost of losing their base form. But if you feel like the 2 team health and blind resist can make a difference, like you're not using Fagan Rise weapon, which is probably the most common way to gain 2 team healths with a meaningful resist. If you're not using that, this could possibly be a solution, but I feel like I wouldn't use this weapon assist until the base form has lost all their value and you don't think you're ever going to use them again. For Blades, they have a similar archetype to Saber because they have 2 skill boosts in their base form, they transform after 20 turns, and they have some durability in their base form. Not the most, but not the worst either. You may be able to tank it, you may not. It all depends on who you pair with and whatever floor 1 you're dealing with. Once they transform, they have 777 combo, double VDP, along with a modest attack stat. So they have damage potential, especially when you form that VDP. It definitely is meaningful, but they suffer from the same redundant awakenings. You don't need 2 skill bind resist, I feel. Like, you needed it before you transform, not so much afterwards, I feel. Unless you're running like a bunch of Blue Odins and Lampedes on the team, and it's not AA4 floor 1, you should be okay. It'll be meaningful then, but at this point in time, I don't think it's truly needed. And that bind immunity should have really been super bind immunity. Again, wasting awakening slots. But after transforming and awakenings aside, their active skill is a 2-turn cooldown, and that will generate changing fire to water and wood to heal. So you can definitely function as a Norza alternative. You could use them instead of Norza on a Norza team. You could use them as a pairing with Norza, and it still creates that active skill loop, which is mandatory for Norza teams. As a leader, they have modest bulk as well. The similar idea, you have to be above 50% health in order to tap into the passive damage reduction, but it's easy to achieve, and if you're utilizing Norza alongside, you should always be able to heal to full health. The biggest issue is obviously multi-hits and just having a bit lower effective health overall, because Norza herself doesn't have the greatest effective health. But you have auto-fall attacks, so it definitely can be utilized instead of Yomi, and it will provide you with a faster active skill instead of Yomi's, and it can be utilized as a way to close the system, so to speak, so you don't have to rely on Yuri if you don't have Norza's, because Yuri is just so inferior by comparison. So as a whole, I feel like this is definitely a strong leader because it can pair with Norza favorably. You can utilize them as a sub. You could even just utilize them for their 2-turn cooldown to be a base for inheritance. There is flexibility with this card, I feel, overall, but again, if they had made better awakening, like just condensing and just making the awakenings more efficient, they could have been a much stronger leader overall. But Blades, like Saber, they do suffer from a lower attack multiplier, which might be problematic in current endgame content. Also considering the fact that water is probably the most disadvantaged color, especially when you're playing through World of Carnage or Shura 1, because of the Manoas having wood after 50% health. For their weapon assist, they have an attacker killer and a skill boost. Rare combination, but at the same time, the opportunity cost of not using their base form is too high. I wouldn't utilize this weapon assist unless you have duplicates or you've lost absolutely every possible value from their base form, which hopefully will take some time, but at the same time, this is a nice backup fall plan. The main reason why I'm not super keen on making it right away is because while Attacker Killer is nice with a skill boost, there are not too many attackers out there. Perhaps you can argue that World of Carnage 2 or Ruler of Hell's Hall has many attacker spawns. Mostly Gills at the end has attacker, and there's a couple of other attackers beforehand. Maybe, but at the same time, you might need different utility as well. For the next new card is Triple O. I don't know if is that the way to pronounce it, but to me it's Triple O's and it's not White Spot. But with Triple O, they have in their base form respectable amount of damage output. Like it feels like a relatively generic card. Their active skill does create changes all orbs to fire, wood, and light, and then reducing unable to match orb effects by 5, reducing awoken binds and binds by 5. A nice active skill, like having those two counters alongside a board changer is nice because at least one component will have value at a given time. Like you're not going to have a dead active skill at the end. The main drawback is they're kind of a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. They don't have that many skill boosts. They have modest damage output, not the greatest damage output. They don't necessarily provide resists either. Like if you have, like, say, the Goldfish Girl or Christmas Gremmy or the spicier unable to match orb effect clearers, they are obviously, I feel, going to be a stronger option instead. But thankfully, they have other forms to choose from. They have multiple evolution paths, so if their base form is not appetizing, their other forms will be. So their fire form provides you with Rose, skill boosts, and an active skill that does 2 million button damage to all enemies. That's quite rare, and that's a large amount of button damage to everything. It's rare to have an AoE or multi-hit or multi-attack button of that value, so that definitely is helpful. Of course, it only has true applications of farming, but that's what they're going to be used for, because as a leader, if you match 6 or more connected fire orbs, tons of damage, and you have rows, so you obviously want to be matching those rows anyway, so the damage output is tremendous. You can make a very powerful farming leader because you even have auto follow-up attack built into this leader skill. Obviously the drawbacks are, well, 2 leaders are probably redundant with that active skill, and it might be challenging to actually have an inherit over top, but you could potentially just asymmetrically pair them with someone else, and you might utilize, say, like Chibi Erd, Dark Omega. There are options at least, so you can have more active skill diversity and hopefully more orb changers to give you that steady flow of 6 fire orbs. But the attack multiplier is tremendously high, so I would pursue this form if you don't have any of the more desirable like farming teams out there. Like I find, like for myself, Shivnia works well, Chibi Erd works, Dark Omega, just to name a few. Like you get the idea. There are quite a few farming leaders out there, and if you don't have any stellar ones and you have enough mono fire or fire orb changers that you can make it work, like Christmas Uriel, for instance, or Nidhogg's, this could be a meaningful form to pursue. In their water form, they have 2 devil killers, 2 machine killers, and can use machine killer latents. They have potentially up to 3 VDPs, but you might choose the super skill boost instead, because with their 2-turn delay, they can actually become a 5 effective skill boost card with killers that are relevant against all the notable spawns in Shura 1/World of Carnage 1. Basically, the most dangerous spawns in this dungeon is machine types and devils, and you have both of those killers, and when you match that VDP, their personal damage will be quite meaningful. The main drawback is they don't have any natural damage output against non-devil or machine types, and they only truly get big damage when you tap into that VDP, so they are definitely orb hungry, but they can definitely function as a sub on your mono water team to help you transform, because 5 effective skill boosts with that delay is huge, because remember, floor 1 on Shura Realm has a water absorb, so delaying it means you don't have to deal with that water absorb, which means you can actually pass and kill the floor, which is obviously important. So I feel like they can definitely function as a useful sub, and that delay does have applications later on, as well as the attack buff, so it's never going to necessarily be a bad active skill. Just the main issue is it may not be like the sexiest looking card, so to speak, in the sense that it doesn't counter that many mechanics. It mostly feels like a conditional damage stick with effective skill boost overall. So like I still think it's strong, and it's probably going to be the most universally helpful form to make, especially for players who utilize mono water teams. And in fact, with this leader skill, you need to match 4 or more connected water orbs, so they can actually viably pair with blades because similar activation requirements. You have similar amount of bulk as well, and the damage reduction doesn't come from being above 50% health, so it does help ease those multi-hits a little bit. Just be aware that the effective health might be a little lower still because there's no health multiplier tied here, but at least the bonus combos can be helpful. For their final non-weapon assist form, they have potentially high damage output with a dark TPA and a relatively easy to use leader skill. Problem is, the leader skill needs you to match, well, the leader themselves favors TPA, so you could match 4 or more connected dark orbs. You can make it a row or a blob of some kind, but the TPA is where their damage shines. But unfortunately, most other dark cards don't really play nice with it. Asymmetrical pairing, there are not many dark leaders who want to match that type of pattern. Most of them are blobs or rows, and they tend to be just more efficient overall. Like TPA is a awakening that is struggling, I feel, overall. Like it just doesn't quite do enough, but perhaps maybe if you have Zerakor's weapon, maybe you can make something meaningful out of it. But because you do have a reasonably high attack stat, you do have many TPAs, many 7 combos, you can use the on-stat transfer, and their active skill is a 4-turn cooldown, which is actually quite powerful. So maybe with enough experimentation, you could possibly make it work out, but I'm not sure how it will necessarily play out, mostly because I feel like TPAs are still a bit of an awkward awakening to truly shine at this point in time. For their weapon assist, I really feel like it's just a glamorized Riku weapon, because Riku's weapon provides skill bind resist and skill boost. That's almost exactly what this provides. Yes, you get a poison resist, yes, you get a bit of health, but that's really all the extra zest that's going to happen. And Riku's active skill is a much longer base cooldown, so it's less likely to actually accidentally charge up. So because of that, I'm much more inclined to not pursue this weapon assist and chase the other forms, because, well, if you have Riku weapons, you're basically the same thing anyways, but possibly better because you have a much larger window for active skill management. For Rider 1, In their base form, they have large amounts of devil damage potential, but no VDP to really smash through voids. So, like, if you need a devil killing potential solution, it might be useful, but as a whole, I don't feel like it's going to make that big of a splash. For their evolve form, they again have TPAs, and they do potentially have reasonable damage output as well with their double 7 combos and their 4 TPAs and respectable attack stat. Furthermore, their active skill does provide a 2-turn delay, so they become a more effective skill boost card, and the replacing of all orbs does give the potential for an extra combo, which in turn acts like an effective skill boost. It's not reliable, but it could be potentially 5 effective skill boosts. Not a bad deal. As a leader, you have a solid amount of health, you have easy to achieve damage reduction, you have bonus movement time, and just no healing. But you're an attacker type, so I feel like you could just pair with Fasca. Pairing with Fasca will give you the bigger board, you'll get the RCV to solve the healing issues, and the extra movement time will definitely play well with the 7x6 board. I think it's a reasonably strong pairing. The drawback is, well, Raijin is just a superior pairing of Fasca. Raijin has better multipliers and more damage output from herself. I just feel like if you have Raijin as a possible option, I would rather lead with Raijin and pair with Fasca as opposed to using Rider 1 and 2, which will, I feel, result in an inferior pairing by comparison, mostly because you don't get that auto follow attack, and Raijin does hit harder as well. For their weapon assist, they have full bind immunity, team health, team RCV. So nice, a little bit of added bulk. No one's going to be upset by that. Tape resist as well. So this weapon assist can definitely be utilized on cards who are obviously vulnerable to being bound. The extra bulk is nice, tape resist is situational, and they still have the same 2-turn delay with the board refresh. So if this is inherited on a card with a low enough base cooldown, it can be a way to layer in extra effective skill boosts. And if you get that lucky Skyfall, well, there you go, there's a third effective skill boost. There is the chance. The main drawback is with a 14-turn cooldown, it is possibly difficult to have it ready in time because you have to inherit it on a tremendously low base cooldown card for it to actually pan out. So it all depends on what team composition you're actually utilizing and whether or not you can utilize this active early on enough to make it count. So I feel like I would pursue this form a bit over their 1 and 2 unless, especially if you had Raijin. If you didn't have Raijin or other viable Fasca pairings, maybe retain this form and convert to a weapon in the future. But as a whole, I feel like they are just a reasonably average card. For black, in their base form, they have 5 skill boosts, 3 dark rose, and an active skill that unlocks the board and gives you a board of wood, light, dark, and heal. So I feel like they are just a relatively generic skill boost solution with some passive damage. They are not necessarily bringing anything truly magical or amazing to the team, but they do their job reasonably well. Nothing amazing, but nothing horrible either. In their RX form, they have some TPAs and VDP, but those awakenings do not play nicely with each other, and their attack stat is quite low. For their active skill, they can create 9 wood orbs and 3 heart orbs over non-wood orbs. So you get that VDP, which is definitely helpful for activation requirements, and you do get a bit of orb movement time and bonus combos. As a leader, they actually have solid multipliers. Like, you just need to be wood and you need to use an active skill every turn, and when you match combos, you're going to get the damage reduction, which is going to happen. 4 or more is a very easy threshold. And the biggest issue comes down to, do you have a 1-turn cooldown card that's actually meaningful? And unfortunately, at this point in time, I don't feel like wood has a 1-turn cooldown card that is meaningful enough to utilize a sub. So as a result, you could possibly clear content, but it'll be kind of grindy and slow. Just remember, the damage reduction is not tied to the active skill, it's only the attack multiplier. But without an active skill you can abuse every single turn, I feel like it's going to be an uphill battle. I feel like it could still clear content, but it's just going to be more challenging. For their light form, they are actually a tremendous damage solution because they have 4 attack while below 50%. That's 16 times personal damage against any spawn with no combo count requirement. Just need to be below half health. They also have VDP, so they definitely can just smash through things. The biggest issue is we don't have an ideal leader to utilize them on. There is tremendous damage output, but no light team is going to truly want to abuse this card. Like, there's nowhere to use this to their maximum efficiency. So I feel like it's just something to be aware of, but at the same time, it's not going to change your life if you roll them and make this form today, because you don't necessarily have the most places to utilize them on. For their water form, they could have 4 to 5 skill boosts. They have multiple killers. The problem is all the killers don't line up. So unless the killers line up, you don't have meaningful damage. So you're just kind of like a skill boost stick that creates a row of water at the bottom and heals all your health. Not solving many mechanics. Maybe if you're a mono water farming team, maybe it could help. The little bit of VDP and the killers might line up against certain spawns, but as a whole, I'm not tremendously impressed with this card overall. And their damage reduction leader skill only takes effect if they're above 80% health, so that's a terribly small window for success. For their weapon assist, it's 3 Dark Rose with Cloud Resist and 20% Poison and Jammer. So for Mono Dark teams, this is obviously a helpful weapon assist, but at the same time, I feel like there are much better Cloud Resist options. I think Fagan Rai has kind of ruined many other Cloud Resist options out there because it's so powerful for what it does. Amatsu's loot, similarly, an incredibly strong Cloud Resist weapon assist. I feel like if I had those options, or just there are many strong Cloud Resist options, I wouldn't want to pursue this one. Maybe if it's Mono Dark, maybe, but at the same time, I feel like it's just an average to underwhelming weapon assist overall, because the active skill is not the longest cooldown and not the greatest effect either. For Den Zero, their base form has tremendous damage multipliers with double 7 combo, 10 combo, but their abysmally low attack stat basically offsets all that prowess. Like, yes, you have 20 times personal damage, but when your attack stat is basically half of like other hard-hitting cards, you can basically just take off one of those 7 combos and like you're about a 10 times effect personal damage multiplier card compared to things with higher attack. It's not going to be as magical as you think it is, and they only have 1 skill boost, so that means you're going to be excluded from transforming teams. But the problem is fire transforming teams are the best for fire at this point in time, like Gillian, Sena, and I guess Saber as well. They're all strong leaders, but they need to transform, and 1 skill boost on a card like this is not enough justification overall. Like, I feel like it's going to be quite a hindrance to weave them into your team. In their evolve form, they do gain 4 to 5 skill boosts, but I would probably take 4 skill boosts and take the super poison resist. They have some damage output, pretty piss poor attack stats still, but at least it gives a bit more flexibility, and their active skill removes all awoken binds. Not regular binds, but all awoken binds and a rainbow board changer. So I feel like this form would definitely be utilized more on rainbow teams. It's not a bad option either. Like, you do get skill boost, super poison resist, guard break. Not a bad thing overall. More flexible by comparison, because unless we get a mono fire leader who doesn't transform at all, and somehow all the cards alongside don't care about transforming, their base form will still be awkward. And again, that offensive prowess is really not that magical either. For their weapon assist, they have an attack while above 80% and 60% jam resist. The problem with attack while above 80% is it's such a narrow window for success. It only gives 1.5 times attack, and being above 80% health is not the easiest. If you're playing through current endgame content, all the last floors have 1-turn timers, and they will hit you hard, and I highly doubt you're ever going to be above 80% for the duration of that entire fight, so it is a little awkward there overall. And I guess the active skill does provide Awoken skill bind solution, but we're starting to see more binds with Awoken binds, like Shura 2 or Ruler of Hell's Halls. We see like preemptive Awoken skill bind followed by binds. This active skill won't solve those problems. It solves one of them, but you need both of them solved, ideally in the same active. So I feel like where the game is going at this point in time, this active skill without a bind clear component alongside of it won't be as efficient. For Super 1, they have a super cool mechanic of transforming many times. And it's not like the Green Godfest exclusive that no one really utilizes. They don't cycle back to their form. So you get to use each form once, and then you'll end up in the final form. And as you transform along the way, you have reasonably short active skills. You only need 12 turns to transform, so you're going to transform all the time. And you have 3 turns, 3 turns, 3 turns, and then eventually it's a 10 turn at the very end. So their interim forms, they do have relatively similar awakenings, if I'm not mistaken, and it's only their final form that just kind of pushes them upward further, because they smash the worthless double bind into a single super bind, so they can squeeze in an extra machine killer. So strong damage output if you can go through 12 turns. Well, that'll be turn 1, then you get 3, 3, 3, and then you're the card you want to be. So basically 9 turns later after transforming, you have a powerful card here. And thankfully the leader skill stays the same for every transformation state. So let's take a look at it right now. Leader skill gives you bonus health for attacker types. Match 5 or more combos, you get attack multiplier, and you get damage reduction when matching 5 or more connected non-fire orbs. Quite a few weird things going on at the same time. Like attacker typing means you could possibly pair Fasca, make your life a little easier. Definitely offsets the no RCV component. You need to blob your orbs, which is kind of weird, but that's okay. I just feel like as a whole, like they are a reasonable leader, but they're not bringing anything truly new to the table. Like pairing a Fasca does work, but 7x6 is more punished nowadays. Like Gung Ho is definitely punishing 7x6 plays now because we are now encountering spawns that give extra and problematic mechanics if you have the bigger board. So it is a little bit of a drawback. But as a sub, maybe you could utilize them because they are quite strong. But the problem is, even though their awakenings are nice, their attack set is respectable, the active skill in their final form I think is truly not that great. It's a 10-turn cooldown, so pretty long for a transforming card, and you get 10 times attack for attacker for 1 turn. That's excessive. Like, if we didn't have Super Resolve, if we didn't have spawns with comically high effective health, this burst could have been more usable, but you only get to use it once. And then, if it has Super Resolve, you have to still kill the spawn again. Like, it's not necessarily solving those multi-step issues. Like Gills resurrects himself one time, so again, similar idea. Like you don't have that burst for later on, so it's a little redundant. Like it's a huge amount of attack bonus, but it's kind of redundant. And the 5 million button damage is worthless if you're playing through arena style content. It's great for farming, but if you're farming, you're not going to transform and then wait 9 turns to use a button. The dungeon's probably over by then, so it's not really bringing anything truly great to the table in that regard. So I feel like they are reasonably strong, but at the same time, their weapon assist, I feel, has much more universal and easy to gain value by comparison, because their weapon assist gives you a single skill boost, 3 enhanced fire orbs, which will give a noticeable increase in damage output, and a 20% blind resist. That 20% blind resist does combo with Samurai 3 to get 100%, and the main idea is, with this weapon assist, you get a skill boost to help you transform, but the extra passive damage can be meaningful. And with a 40-turn base cooldown, it's never going to accidentally charge up. You'd have to try incredibly hard to make that charge up. It's not going to happen. So you have that layer of security no matter where it's inherited. The main drawback of this weapon assist is it competes heavily with Leyland's Earring, which is relatively accessible by comparison. Leyland's Earring provides you with a single skill boost as well, and then 3 enhanced orbs, 1 fire, 1 light, 1 wood. So less potent in terms of damage output for mono fire, but not horrible by comparison. But Leyland's weapon assist comes with full bind immunity. And this full bind immunity is incredibly important for World of Carnage 2 or Ruler of Hell's Hall, because on floor 1 there's a preemptive 10-turn bind. And most of the teams that you're bringing in this dungeon are transforming, and the leaders themselves don't actually have bind immunity before they transform. So you solve that issue right there. And because of that, I tend to prioritize Leyland's Earring over top of this, just because I need that bind immunity. But at the same time, if you don't need the bind immunity, this is definitely a stronger weapon assist to pursue, because bind immunity becomes pointless if you don't need it. And the extra blind resist gives you that little bit of security when it combos with Samurai 3, but the extra passive damage does add up. So if I did have a super one, I would probably pursue this weapon assist, because while it is super cool transforming many times, it feels still a little gimmicky and not going to be providing enough value by comparison to their weapon assist. For X-Aid, in their base form, they can function as a healing solution. They have 4 enhanced heart orbs, reasonable RCV stat. They have 2 to 3 skill boosts, or 2 skill boosts with super blind resist. And their active skill provides you with a column of light twice, and 4 turns of lights, orbs, skyfalls. So useful active overall, but the problem is I feel they compete so heavily with Amaterasu. They have reasonably similar typing, same colors, but Amaterasu provides significantly more healing by comparison, and Amaterasu is a better active skill. Orb generation, cool, but Amaterasu clears binds, and Awoken binds gives you that haste to recycle active skills and actually function as more skill boosts, and it's just more healing, which is the whole point of these cards. So I feel like as a whole, like it's reasonable as a healing solution, but if you have Amaterasu, you probably want to utilize them. And also, Amaterasu with her fire subtyping means she can be used on Gillian teams. Xaid can't because of Xaid won't be providing as much value by comparison because, well, they don't have the fire typing or color overall. And they provide less healing, which is an issue, of course, on Gillian teams. So I think they are reasonable, but they are definitely outpaced. For their evolved form, they can have 4 skill boosts with super blind resist. I probably want to pick that, to be honest. Lots of L's and that same active skill. So it's a reasonable card. Like you have L's, super blind, 4 skill boosts. But the problem is, I feel like they have so much overlap with Diao Chan and Spider Lady from the Mystic Inspectors event. Like all these cards provide super blind, very similar number of skill boosts, but Diao Chan and Spider Lady have much shorter base cooldowns, which also have, I feel, more useful active skills. But with a 2 or a 3 turn base cooldown, you're much more easily to inherit something over top of it that can be meaningful. So as a result of this, I'm not truly excited about this card. If you have Diao Chan or Spider Lady, I'd be much more inclined to utilize them as a sub by comparison. For their weapon assist, they can provide L and tape. And this is a relatively rare combination. There are not many things that can do this. At the same time, it's a relatively niche set of awakenings. We don't need those that often because tape resist often can be foregone in many dungeons because it tends to not be as devastating. And L's are truly only helpful if you don't have any on the team whatsoever, because with one on the team, you can unlock the board, which is meaningful. If you have multiple across the team, not so great. The damage scaling isn't that high, and there are very few truly great L leaders at this point in time to take advantage of it. But maybe you could argue like Ryume and Santa Tamadra could benefit from this, but Spider Lady's weapon is also 2 L's, which is a bigger damage output by comparison. For phase, in their base form, they have 2 turns of damage absorb void with an attack buff alongside of it. But I would rather look at their evolved form because their base form offers so little by comparison. In their evolved form, they get skill charge to hasten it along. So with skill charge and this type of active skill, which does 2 turns of absorption counter and an attack buff alongside of it, it makes me think of Leona, because Leona has somewhat similar archetype here. But the thing is, Leona has significantly more damage output. Phase has way less damage output by comparison. And even though the active skill is helpful, they're not going to be a tremendous damage solution like Leona, and they have kind of inefficient awakenings for a top rarity card. They could have been a skill boost plus, it could have been super bind immunity. You're wasting some active skills here. They could have been offensive in nature, which could have propelled their damage output. So as a whole, I feel like they are reasonable, but it's going to be hard to slot them in a team because they don't bring enough damage output. They don't have enough damage output either. Sorry, they don't have enough damage output. They don't have enough skill boost. So they're not really fulfilling any of those roles super well. Yes, it's a nice active skill that can be on a low enough cooldown, but I think it might be possibly hard to incorporate into a team. But at the same time, if you're playing through content, especially content that does not have color absorb, it is more meaningful because at this point in time, color absorb and damage absorb are quite popular mechanics in endgame content, and you want to have both. So oftentimes they tend to be coming together. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But at the same time, you just need to be aware that you will probably need a color absorb on your team somewhere, and this individual can't solve both of those issues. But again, if you're playing content that doesn't care about color absorb, well, you now have a powerful, a reasonably strong, fast-charging damage absorption counter. For their weapon assist, they have 60% poison resist, attack well above 80%, and that same active skill. So the active skill, like, it is an 18-turn cooldown. It's reasonable for a 2-turn damage absorb counter. It can be inherited on something, but again, just be mindful that color absorb is an important mechanic, at least at this point in time, and the attack well above 80% has a relatively narrow window for success. Poison resist is always helpful, so a reasonable weapon assist overall. For 0-1, in their base form, 5 skill boosts, light rose, and they have an easy-to-use farming leader. All you need to do is match 6 or more connected light orbs for 324 times attack with dual leaders and auto follow attack. Easy to do, easy to use. Problem is, they don't make orbs with their active skill, and their active skill, it has so much fluctuation. Their active skill provides you damage reduction and attack buff based on the number of skill boosts on your team. So the number of skill boosts on your team will obviously vary, but if you are utilizing transforming cards, even such as Blades or Saber from this event, after they transform, you don't have skill boosts anymore. So the value of this active skill goes down. And the scaling is relatively gentle. With 10 skill boosts on your team, you only have 30% damage reduction and 2 times attack bonus. That's pretty low. If you have 20 skill boosts, let's up the ante, so to speak. 60% damage reduction, 3 times attack boost. It's all for 1 turn. I'm still not really feeling it. And you're not going to really go above 20 skill boosts. You're probably not going to hit 20 skill boosts on a regular basis, because if you have things like Sena or Gillian, Grandis, etc., like my team there with 2 Sena leaders, Gillian, Grandis as sub, I'd have 6, 6, 3, 2, 11 skill boosts. 11 skill boosts that disappear after I transform. Makes his active skill weaker. I'm kind of talking about this active skill possibly in preparation for their weapon assist, just so you have an idea of how it works. But as a leader, easy to use farming solution with those light rows. For their evolved form, they do have reasonable VDP damage. They take away those rows, and they have a similar leader skill that gives you plus combos instead of auto fall attack. I guess you could utilize them as like mono light farming, but I feel like without active skills that generate orbs, it's harder to use. And for their weapon assist, I did mention that active skill does have drawbacks, but thankfully it does come with an attacker and healer killer. So it's rare to have 2 killers on a weapon assist, and there's obviously no weapon that has this exact combination, but the true value comes when these killers line up in a given dungeon multiple times. Not necessarily on the same spawn, but they function across multiple floors because there are many spawns with healer or attacker typing. So has value there. But as the active skill goes, I don't feel like you can rely on it for damage boosting or for damage reduction that well, because the numbers are a bit too low. But I would definitely pursue this weapon assist in most cases because it's rare to have a 2 killer weapon. Now we come to the 5-star cards. So for the 5-star cards, all of them have weapon assist, and this will often be their preferred form because, let's face it, bottom rarity cards tend to have lackluster stats and just a kit overall because they have to have weak cards in event to make cards stronger. It's just the way it has to be. But at the same time, we are starting to see a much higher increase of 5-star rarity challenges, which means all these cards can definitely be utilized for that purpose. I don't think it's justification enough to roll for them, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind before auto-converting to a weapon assist that it might give me some value for these 5-star challenges. It might. So the first one is Fours, and this is one of the orb skin cards, which means you can purchase them directly. And they have reasonable awakenings. They have okay stats. Like, I think they're an okay card, but at the same time, they're not going to be outpacing other options. They don't necessarily counter much mechanics. I guess if you take Super Jam or Resist, sure, but you lost on 2 skill boosts. You have okay damage output. You can get more of a VDP, but again, lost skill boost, lost Jam or Resist. Like, it's a reasonable card, but I feel like if you have other options available, you'd want to utilize them over instead. For 5-star rarity challenges, obviously much stronger by comparison. And for their leader skill, I feel like it could be a little bit difficult because you have to connect 5 or more water and light at the same time. So 2 colors, multiple blobs, hard to do. But as a sub, you might be able to utilize them well. And they create fire, light, and heart orbs. So if you're using, say, Lamp as your 5-star leader, who is a great solution, this as a sub will definitely be meaningful. For their weapon assist, it gives you an L and 60% jam resist. So as I mentioned before, an L is most valuable when you don't have any Ls on the team because now you can unlock the board. If you have Ls, well, you're kind of just a 60% jam resist solution. And the board changer is, I guess it's nice, 10 water, 10 light, 10 hearts, but it doesn't actually counter mechanics. It doesn't like override debuffs. It doesn't give you bonus combos. It doesn't give you buff, like burst, nothing else alongside of it. So I feel like it's a much weaker orb skin card. And if you are truly gung-ho on purchasing an orb skin, I would get Rider W, because Rider W is much stronger by comparison. In their base form, they actually have tremendously high damage output, especially if you can be below 50% health. And they can supplement the damage further with TPAs. Obviously without a VDP, they can't pierce through voids, but hey, pretty strong damage output with a high attack stat. So for your 5-star rarity challenge, definitely a strong potential. And if you can keep your health below 50%, you have a strong leader skill as well. But the bigger picture is their weapon assist, which has much more universal value by comparison. So their weapon assist provides middling awakenings. I don't think these are particularly amazing awakenings, like some movement time, skill barrier resist might be helpful. If it's helpful, cool, but most of the time it won't be. A bit of health, bit of attack, a bit of RCV. Like, some stats, sure, but again, it's mostly for this active skill. And the active skill provides you with a 3-turn burst that scales with the number of skill boost awakenings on your team, and it scales much better compared to the yellow card who has skill boost for attack and skill boost for their damage and their attack. So with this active skill, if you have 10 skill boosts, you have 300% damage bonus. 3 times attack. And 10 skill boost is pretty low. Like, you're probably going to have maybe like 15 or so. So now you're at 4.5 times damage output for 3 turns. Like I mentioned, many spawns have too much effective health to kill in a single turn or super resolve. So this burst will last for the duration of that whole encounter and possibly even overlap into another spawn. For example, in Sure Realm, base Manoa is quite tanky, about half as tanky as her evolved form. If you chip her down a little bit and use this burst, you probably could one-shot her. And then you have 2 turns to possibly two-turn the Manoa afterwards. The burst should not be underestimated. This is a huge amount of damage output that will trivialize the last floors. Obviously, the drawback is it doesn't provide any counters to other mechanics. The awakenings are a bit lackluster, but at the same time, if you can work this weapon assist into your team, you have a wonderful damage solution for the final floors. Just be mindful that skill boosts are lost after you transform for various cards. And they can be directly purchased because of an orb skin, so if you are gung-ho about this card, instead of rolling, it's going to be a better deal for you to probably purchase it. For V3, I don't find V3 as much value outside of their double row making effect. And if you're going to utilize them for their double row making active skill, you might as well make the weapon assist because it gives you some awakenings. Like, it's free awakenings. Like, why not? Like, if you're going to inherit them, why not just make the weapon? That's just kind of how I view it. And a double row maker has value based on how many other double row makers you own. The less you have, the more helpful it is. If you have so many already, the value is kind of middling by comparison. But the idea of double row makers is that you utilize them after a mono board changer. So let's say I make a mono board of water, and then I use this active skill. I now have a row of wood and a row of hearts. I can easily rearrange that board into whatever pattern is necessary, but it creates an easy 7 combo VDP board for water, or whatever pattern is actually necessary. So it has flexibility in that regards, but at the same time, it's only truly useful when you're utilizing like farming builds, and again, if you have other double row makers, less helpful. For Amazon, they are not amazing whatsoever. Their base form, I don't really feel like it serves much purpose. Like, nothing truly magical. The active skill is a bit underwhelming. Their weapon assist is also a bit of a disaster. I'm kind of glad they put all the disastrous stuff into one card, so it just hopefully makes the other cards a little better by comparison, right? For Kuga, they actually have reasonable awakenings for 5-star rarity challenges. Like, that's a respectable amount of damage output, albeit a low attack stat, but 777 combo, double TPA, not bad, not terrible. Their weapon assist gives you a physical killer, which is probably going to be the more universally helpful thing. Like, killer weapons are helpful. Obviously, the more killers you have as available, the less helpful this one is in particular. And you also need to be mindful of the fact that it's a low base cooldown. The low base cooldown helps their base form inherit something more meaningful, but it's bad for weapon assist because it can accidentally overcharge, and the effect is not that great for a weapon assist. For Ryuki, their base form has lots of rows. So mono fire teams, you can have 4 skill boosts, lots of rows. And you can create a row of fire orbs and an attack buff. You can only utilize it once per dungeon because of the longer cooldown, but it's a nice way to add in damage. It's a nice way to also provide an attack buff and row making. So if you are utilizing mono fire for your farming needs, this is definitely a meaningful card to keep in their base form. But if you don't, well, probably not going to be as helpful. Their weapon resist provides you with some skill bind resist, 40% poison resist. Like, it could be possibly helpful. At the same time, I feel like it's a relatively low impact weapon assist. Maybe you utilize it again for fire farming teams where you need to layer in skill bind resist and a bit of extra passive damage. For build, their base form potentially has 5 skill boosts, but they're kind of mostly just a skill boost solution that can create 2 columns of orbs. Column of orbs are helpful, but I prefer double row makers because 1812 board is just a little better distribution compared to a 2010 board by comparison. So some value there, but their weapon assist, it's a reasonable weapon assist. It's only 3 cards in the game that actually provide an awoken material killer. So in niche situations where you need a awoken material killer, This is obviously very helpful. Main drawback is the farmable Zerog weapon has this as well. So you don't really need to have this card by comparison. So if you farmed Zerog's weapon assist, which you probably have at some point in time just naturally, there's very little value for this individual here. So maybe for your 5-star challenges, maybe utilize them as a sub. But again, I feel like it's unfortunate that there's too much overlap of a very farmable and relatively easy to acquire card. For Poppy, they provide you with a full bind and awoken bind clear, so I guess it would be a useful card for your 5-star or below rarity challenges, and they provide a little attack buff, and the attack buff scales with their skill bind resist. Skill bind resist, you're probably not going to have many on the team, so it works for herself as a sub, which will only be for 5 rarity challenges, but relatively niche overall. Their weapon assist provides you with a noticeable amount of healing bonus, but no, it's actually a reasonable weapon assist. Like, the healing bonus can be meaningful on your RCV or like your healing solution cards. It makes it so those heart TBAs heal a little bit more, and the active skill is not terrible. At least it clears all binds and awoken binds. You're probably not going to get that much value out of the attack buff, but it is something at least. Overall, like, most of the bottom rarity cards are replaceable, and I'm not truly excited by them. So, do I plan to roll in Dream Rolls? The answer is I do not plan on rolling in the Kamen Rider event because the bottom rarity just doesn't have enough appeal to me. Like, I could roll the vast majority of them, which is going to be the non-orb skin cards, and they won't be helping my monster box. I'm not going to be gaining more value. They won't be fulfilling new roles or niches that I couldn't have done so beforehand. And for 5-star rarity challenges, I've acquired a bunch of things already that it's probably not necessary. So, as a whole, I feel like it is a underwhelming event to roll in. But at the same time, if you feel that you like the franchise, or you might get lucky, or maybe you want to use the monster exchange system, you can go for it. But at the same time, I used most of my stones in Player's Choice Godfest. I was much happier with those results, and I still can dream, so might as well dream about what could be with those magical rolls. So for my dream 6-star roll, I feel like Blades would be the most interesting. Like, it does open up more options for mono water for my team. And for mono fire, I feel like I'm reasonably stacked already. Like, I have a wonderfully functioning Sena team. I can clear all dungeons in the game with them. It works. I don't really feel like I could benefit that much from Super 1 and that weapon assist. It is a nice weapon assist with skill boost and 3 orb enhances, but I haven't needed it at this point in time. I can clear all current content, so there's a good chance I could gain it. It might be helpful, but I probably don't truly need it. Whereas Blades does something a little different. And Saber, again, I already have strong fire leaders, and I don't need another mono fire sub, so less value there. For 5-star cards, it's probably going to be the dream 5-star card for everyone, because all the others I think are much more underwhelming by comparison, because Rider W and that sweet, sweet, sweet massive 3-turn burst weapon assist is just irreplaceable. There's nothing else that can replicate how valuable that weapon assist is, so obviously that would be my dream card. So, in conclusion, I feel like this is an underwhelming and lackluster event to roll in. There are too many weak cards that populate the bottom rarity of this event. Like, there's just 77.3% of the rolls will be this, and remember, the orb skin card is not a likely thing to actually acquire. It's very low odds by comparison. The vast majority of rolls will be these things here, and you're not going to be happy with those. So with that in mind, I feel like this is more of a roll free stuff, maybe IAP bundle, or maybe monster exchange event, and then skip and ignore otherwise from the rare machine component. But with that being said, let me know what you think about this event in the comments below. Do you think it is worth rolling and pursuing, or would you rather save your magic stones for something else? Either way, hopefully you all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.